In the next few days, we're going to be doing something called web scraping. That is using Python to open a website, scrape some data from that website, and then do something with that data. Initially, it's just going to be something very basic, just so we can see how these different modules work together. Now, of course, we're going to be using the terminal and our Python shell as well as virtual environment. So make sure you have those things installed. We also are going to be writing our code in Sublime Text 2. And then finally, we are going to be using Yelp. It's a popular website that is used all around the world for searching for sort of data about our local surroundings. So we're going to kind of take those things into effect. Now, do keep in mind that what we're doing here is not particularly efficient because Yelp actually has something called an API, which can be found in the developer portal, but we're not going to go over that. We're going to be doing something called web scraping. So let's go ahead and open up our terminal, and we're going to change into the desktop. Now I'm already in the desktop, as we see here, and I'm going to create a new virtual environment. So I'll do virtual env, and I'm going to do the Python version 3, and I'm going to call my virtual environment scrape. You can call it whatever you like, but I'm calling it scrape, and then I'm going to change into scrape. Okay, so it's going to download and install, and it's using Python version 3. That's the latest version of Python, of course. So now that we're in here, we're going to go ahead and activate it. Source bin activate. And of course, that's Mac Linux specific. If you're on Windows, you would do /scripts/activate. Hopefully you know all this stuff by now, but just a little refresher if you don't. Now that we're in here, we can do pip freeze, and you'll likely see nothing installed here. If you see something like wheel installed, that's okay. The version of Python that you would be working with doesn't actually matter for what we're doing here. You can do this in Python 2 or Python 3. Okay, so now that we've got this Python 3 installed, so if we go into Python, we'll see that we have Python 3 here. Whereas on my system, if I type Python, I'm working with Python 2, which is nice. But anyways, back into our virtual environment. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of Python, and I'm going to pip install a couple things here, and that's going to be requests as well as BeautifulSoup 4. Press enter, and notice that I just chained the different package names together. So you can do pip install requests by itself, and then you could do pip install BeautifulSoup by itself, and those would actually work in conjunction with each other. Now, BeautifulSoup isn't completely required to do what we're about to do, but it's something that's really nice because it formats things very well for us. So what I want to do here is I'm going to open up Python, and now that I have Python open, I'm going to import a few things. First off, I'm just going to import requests. That's all I'm going to do for now. And I'm actually going to do a request on Yelp. So let's actually look for restaurants near Irvine, California. So this does a search for me. Notice that it already did it. I didn't press enter or anything. It just automatically did it. That's something nice about Yelp. But what our end goal is going to be is to pull some of the data from our search results. So what we see right here is we have a URL that actually pulls some data. So this is called a GET request. Now, a GET request is like what it sounds like. You're actually getting the data from a website. So we want to actually get this data and put it into our own, like into Python. And Python requests, the Python request module, also known at, if we do a Google search for Python requests, this is the module we're working in, HTTP for humans. So basically we're going to be using code to do what we did in the web browser. That is, in the web browser, we put in a URL, we press enter, and then stuff comes back. We're going to do that same sort of thing using code, using Python to do that for us. Now, initially, that's going to be, okay, well, why and what do I need that for? Well, that's going to make a whole lot more sense once we actually get into the nitty-gritty of everything. But right now, that's what we're going to end up doing just to get this code actually showing up. And this Python request module is really good. You can actually play around with some of the things on there to see how that works in of itself if you want more data than what we're going to be going over, because there's definitely a lot to Python requests. And this could be used for all sorts of HTTP requests, including API stuff. And then the other one was BeautifulSoup. So if we just search for BeautifulSoup 4 and Python, make sure it's number 4, we will get the documentation here. And again, it's another one of those things that you can go through the documentation, play around a little bit, and that will be something that you can learn more about Beautiful Soup. Luckily, it works in Python 2 as well as Python 3. So now let's go back to the task at hand. What we see here is we've got this request and we want to know more about it. Like, we want to pull the data from this site. Now, what does this data actually look like? Now, to us as a user, that has colors, it has pictures, it has all this stuff. But really what's behind that is a bunch of code. So to view this code on pretty much any web browser, you go to something called View Source. Now, as far as Chrome is concerned, you would go Chrome, View, Developer, and Source. You can also right-click or control-click on Mac, or right-click on Windows and go to View Page Source. And what this does is it pops up the HTML that's building up this site. Now, if you're familiar with HTML and CSS, you're already very familiar with this. If you're not, if you're just learning how to code, then all of this stuff is the code, or called markup language, that actually makes the browser render this. It's kind of like instructions for the browser to make it look like this. Every website has this. So right here, this is the source for Yelp. And if we go into Python requests, this is the source for Python requests. And you can scroll down, you can see all sorts of cool stuff in there. All right. So really what we're going to be doing is we're going to be grabbing that HTML code and do something with it. So let's go back into our Python shell, and we're going to go ahead and put in our URL as equal to this string right here. So this is going to be the string that I'm going to go ahead and copy, and I'm going to put it in as a string. And then I'm just going to make a Yelp request. So I'll say Yelp _ r equals to requests.get and the URL. So that's doing a GET request. Notice it's loading a little bit. And if I just do Yelp _ r, I see that I have a response of some kind. So if I do r.status _ code, I see that the status code is 200. That means it's a successful status code. That is called an HTTP status code. You can look that up if you want to know more about that. But as far as the status goes, it's a successful one, so the request actually happened. So I can do Yelp _ r.text and press enter and see all of this text. Now, it's kind of hard to read because it doesn't look that great. But this is all HTML. This is the HTML code. This is this source right here. So we actually got everything from that source. Now it's on our Python document. So how do we make this look a little bit better? And I do this by using BeautifulSoup. BeautifulSoup is for all sorts of things, but for now, we're just going to make it look better. So we're going to import BeautifulSoup. And with this text, if I press up, which is Yelp _ r.text, we are going to make that look better. And I'm just going to do Yelp _ soup. And I'm calling it Yelp Soup because if you look at the BeautifulSoup documentation, that's kind of how they do things. So this is what we're doing right here, but we're just doing it with our own stuff. So Yelp Soup equals to BeautifulSoup. Soup. And we want our HTML here, which was Yelp _ r.text. And then we want to use our HTML parser, which is this right here. So html.parser. Press enter. Up. We want to make sure we spell beautiful correctly. So let's try that one more time. BeautifulSoup and Yelp _ r text html.parser. Press enter and nothing happens. But if I do print Yelp _ soup.prettify, this is a BeautifulSoup method, and I press enter, it now actually makes our HTML look a lot cleaner. Now there's still a lot there, but it is now a lot cleaner. So all of those things, let's actually put this into our own Python module in Sublime Text. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to go onto my desktop. Inside of Scrape, I'm going to put a new folder in here, say call it 21, as in this is day 21, and I'm going to call it scrape.py. Okay, so a couple things. We did import requests, and then we also did from BS4, that's BeautifulSoup 4, we imported BeautifulSoup. And then we had a URL, which we did our Yelp URL. So let's go ahead and grab that Yelp URL again and go ahead and copy this. I'm just rewriting the code so you can see it all in action one more time. And then I'll do Yelp_r equals to requests.get and that URL. So this actually performs the request. This actually goes to the internet and gets that URL. If you don't have an internet connection, this will not work. And then we saw if we did Yelp R in our interpreter, we saw something like this, response 200. That's what we saw. But what we want to do actually is print out, we'll do Yelp_r dot status code, and that should equal to 200. Again, unless you don't have an internet connection or the server's down or something like that with the actual URL. So once we have that, we can actually now turn this into what's called pretty text, or making it look better and better formatted by converting it into Yelp. So we'll call it BeautifulSoup equals to BeautifulSoup, and we're taking Yelp_r dot text, and then we're going to do the HTML parser. And it looks like my mind has gone blank on me a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and look up at the documentation, and it's HTML.parser. So I go back in, and we put this as HTML.parser. And there we go. And now this is now called BeautifulSoup stuff, so we can actually do print out Yelp soup.prettify. Cool. But we can actually go one step further, and we can do print Yelp soup.findAll, and we'll do A. So this method right here is going to find all of something for us. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all this code, go back into Python. I'm actually going to exit out of this, clear everything, and then do Python again. Now I have a clean shell. I'm going to go ahead and paste all that stuff in. Notice that when I pasted the URL in, it actually took a second. I'm not going to scroll back up all the way to that. But now we're at print Yelp soup find all A. Now what is A? Now if you're familiar with HTML and CSS, you should already know what A might be, and that is an anchor tag. Anchor tags typically are where you'll find a link to something. So looking at the actual website itself, California fish, that's a link. Seafood, that's a link. Mayubi Shabu is also a link. There's all sorts of things going on here as far as links, and those will be found in an anchor tag. Now to look at this even closer, we can go to inspecting the element, and we will see an A, and then some class, and then some stuff, and then href, so a hyperlink reference, otherwise known as a link, and that's the link itself. So if I press enter now, I see, well, quite a few links. I can scroll up and I can see that all of these links actually exist. So this is literally all of the links. Pressing up, I can see that. So let's actually iterate through these, and I'm going to write it inside of Sublime Text. So we'll say for link in Yelp_soup.findAll, and we'll say A. And we'll just print out link. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this now, and we'll try that again. And now we see the links a little bit cleaner. Some of them have space in them, but for the most part we can see the links definitely cleaner and look at them as we see that they are href. This is something that's really nice about BeautifulSoup, and that's what's going to make all the difference going forward. So what I encourage you now to do is to just kind of play around with this stuff. Now something that you will have to think about going forward is how this URL is structured, how it actually works. So what we see here is we have near Irvine, California. That's a city, and that's a state, right? So what if I change this to, let's say, London? Well, right away it gives me an auto completion, so I can try London, United Kingdom. And notice how this part changes, or the URL changes. What if I changed it to Paris? Let's try that again, Paris. And we got Paris, France, and notice the location changes. So in the URL, well, the only thing that's really changing here is the location. So that's something to think about when we actually build our function to parse any particular area and any particular data. So if you have any questions on this one, let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, let's keep going.